in this episode, the continuing story of Wire. 20 songs taken from the band's 21st century releases. Pull up a chair and let's begin. Hi, Darren here, picking up where we left off. So, Wire. Yes, the roots of the band's 21st century resumption, if you like, do extend back into 1999. The band had been approached about playing and curating a kind of living legend show at the Royal Festival Hall in London. And rather surprisingly, if you know anything about the band's attitude towards nostalgia, they did accept that invite. And in preparation for that show in February of the year 2000, the band did meet for initial rehearsals in November of 1999. And the success of this show, it was a sellout, led to the band touring this kind of best-of show, I guess you'd call it, around the USA. Yeah, it was during these shows that they realised that the nostalgia circuit really wasn't for them. You know, they'd always been a very forward-looking band. And so in 2000, following these shows, Colin and Bruce Gilbert decided to kind of convene together on a regular basis to begin writing some all-new Wire material. Yeah, and these recording sessions over the course of a couple of years bore 2 EPs, which were finally released in 2002. That is Read and Burn 01 and Read and Burn 02. These 2 EPs were also compiled together the following year, that's 2003, for an LP release, and that LP was called Send. And Send is an album pretty much unlike anything else, I think, in the Wire back catalogue. Very bracing take on kind of what feels like Bruce Gilbert's particular kind of avant noise aesthetic. You know, an industrial aggro kind of edge with a kind of an avant dance DJ electronic edge that all the individual band members had been kind of pursuing individually during Wire's downtime. So I've chosen 3 tracks from Send, and number 1 on this list would be The Art of Stopping, the opening track of that first EP. A brutally simple, circling, repetitive riff, riding this metronomic, Robert Gray beat. Colin Newman dragging out his vocal, very sleazily, and the music occasionally coming to these, jarring dead stops, with a groaning synth line or controlled kind of frantic double time beat punctuating these gaps. Yeah, the propulsion of the song is immense. It's all in the art of stopping, yelps Colin, just as the band demonstrate that art perfectly. And number 2, I've got Mr. Marx's Table, this huge crashing, buzzing wall of digitally distorted guitar noise, with Newman's vocal being centered as this remarkably tender, kind of soothing voice, a real counterpoint to this, monolithic sound around it. But this wall does occasionally drop away completely, leaving his vocal bare and pretty and becalmed. There's even what you might even call a drop in Mr. Marx's Table. That's the kind of dance music staple where the beat falls away and everything kind of cools down for a while, and you get this gradual resumption until the euphoria is teased out and you get the maximum impact from that final drop. Yeah, Mr. Marx's Table pulls that trick. And 3, I've got Spent. For me, yeah, this is the defining track of this era of Wire. It has all the hallmarks of Bruce Gilbert's, avant guitar noise approach, corralled into this single, crushing, relentless, hammering riff. Yeah, Newman's vocal brings to mind, a malfunctioning Dalek. It's, this distorted, haranguing, processed sound, lashing out wildly. Yeah, this one is just a glorious digital head-banging classic. Yeah, any notion that the band were kind of, relaxing into a comfort zone were completely obliterated by this record. The live shows of the period are the stuff of legend. The band were abrasive and playful, utterly committed to this kind of gabba industrial punk aesthetic. Wire were back. If you remember, I said Send was primarily conceived through Colin and Bruce meeting over the course of a few years. This was probably the closest they'd ever worked together just as a pair to make a single record. And yeah, I think that proved unsustainable ultimately. There's a common misconception about this, I think, which is that, Bruce Gilbert and Graham Lewis were the conceptual art ones. And Colin was, the flag bearer for the band's, the poppier side, the more melodic instincts. Yeah, this couldn't be further from the truth. I'm going to read a direct quote from an interview that Colin gave circa around about 2013 in the Perfect Sound Forever online fanzine. So Colin says, Bruce has his way. He is someone who's quite determined in certain aspects and will dig his heels in to have certain ideas realised, but that will be completely subverted or seduced by a beautiful melody. He will declare himself to be interested only in noise and then get very excited because something is very beautiful. But we're all perverse creatures. That's the way life is. People who really know the band find that kind of division between one very arty side, whereas I'm Mr. Rock, is just bollocks, really. Colin describing the situation in his own words there. But whatever happened, things did come to a head, and somewhere around the late half of 2004, Bruce decided to leave Wire. Yeah, in many interviews since, he's made it very clear that he is absolutely done with guitars, so maybe that was a big part of it. But there were still some contributions he made to what would be the next Wire release, because he was still credited on that one. And that release is Read and Burn 03, the third EP in the Read and Burn series, and their first as a three-piece, albeit with some input from Bruce, since their days as Wire without the E, all the way back in the early 90s. So yeah, 2007, Read and Burn 03. I'm choosing one track from this one, and that is No Warning Given. Yeah, very moody opening, gives way to that kind of steady, insistent, metronomic Rob Gray rhythm. And I think it's that keeps the focus throughout the song. The production pulls the guitars forwards and backwards in the mix. By turns, they're buzzing and chafing and then billowy and churning. And there's this very pretty buried little riff, just hooking you in there somewhere. Yeah, completely effortless, very gliding melody, kind of anthemic but supple. Where Read and Burn 1 and 2 were very stiff and tight and clenched, this is the polar opposite. Yeah, and shortly after, mid-2008, came Wire's first fully post-Bruce Gilbert release. That's the Object 47 LP. And from this one, I'm choosing the opening track. That's One of Us. It really sharpens the edge that you could hear on No Warning Given from Read and Burn 3. Yeah, hard to really put this one into words. It's just classic Wire pop. It's got a grinding kind of bass line with the guitars, bouncing and purring, eerily over the top. Yeah, the big payoff line that Colin sings is, one of us will live to rue the day we met each other. Is this a thinly, or maybe not so thinly veiled dig at Bruce Gilbert? It could be. There's another line, we're here, we will, we can, finish what we began. I think maybe it is. Yeah, either way, I don't think there's any long-term beef. I have seen interviews with all four original members back together, in the last few years. And there seems to be absolutely nothing to suggest that there's any bad blood or grudges there. But as the opening track on, the first post-Bruce album, One of Us does seem to hint at, a slightly messy separation. A small sidebar here, yeah, it's also worth noting that the band were supplemented with an extra guitarist for touring duties during this period, around about 2008, 2009. And that was Margaret Fiedler McGuinness, ex of Moonshake and Leica. Also, she'd played guitar with PJ Harvey for a while. Yeah, and I think their live appearances of this time are amazing. Anyone checking out live footage, from this period, videos on YouTube, you'll see that, the sharpness that the band had honed, during that Send era touring period was still there. So on to early 2011 now then for the band's second successive album as a three-piece, that being Red Barked Tree. So yeah, I'm taking two from this album. And the first one, number 6 on my list, is Please Take. And at first, what seems just like a blissfully paced, chiming melody, riding one of those typically effortless Robert Gray beats. Yeah, it seems lovely. And then you hear Graham's lyric. He's singing, please take your knife out of my back. And when you do, please don't twist it. And just in case you didn't get the message, he follows that up with, fuck off out of my face. You take up too much space. I don't think Bittersweet really cuts it for Please Take. But whoever the song is directed at, instantly this is Wire. And to these ears, this is the first great Graham Lewis Wire sung song of the 21st century. And also one of my favourite musical tricks. Yeah, it's got a fake ending. Great, I love that stuff. And 7th on my list, and the album closer, I've chosen Red Barked Trees. And I think taking everything from their career up to this point, Red Barked Trees is an utterly unique sounding Wire composition. This kind of shimmering, almost ragga-esque kind of acoustic guitar, very folky, under these syrupy, sweet, Colin Newman vocals. A very folky spin on that kind of modulating, droning, metronomic sound of Wire, with very patient chord changes, and this magical shift of emphasis in the chorus. Yeah, for me, this track is the first bona fide classic song of this new Wire period. So I think, yeah, this album finds Wire cementing, the new lineup with a truly great record in the classic Wire tradition. It's got the post-punk textures and experimentation blending with a very airy, cool vocal delivery and typical kind of mazy lyrics, great dynamics. But yeah, always a but with Wire, change is never far away. And sure enough, no sooner had it been released than there was an announcement. Yeah, the new touring guitarist who'd taken over from Margaret in early 2010, Matt Sims, would be joining the band as a fully contributing member. And change being the watchword here, yeah, the first recorded evidence of this, energized, if you like, four-piece Wire lineup would prove to be a bit of an odd one. Yes, they decided to dust down some of the half-formed sketches, demos from the dying days of the very first version of Wire and retool them quite spectacularly. Yeah, the 2013 album Change Becomes Us took that kind of scrappy, very provocative, lo-fi live and demo stuff from the posthumously released Document and Eyewitness kind of live album from 1981, revisited it, totally recast it. Yeah, it's hard to put into words quite how good this is. I don't know how they managed to breathe life into these kind of gnarly, decades-old kind of takes and fragments, and in the process create, the best record that they'd made in the 21st century. Yeah, if you filed this alongside 154 and told someone, yeah, this is the album they made after 154, yeah, I don't think they'd blink an eye. Anyway, with that in mind, I've chosen 4 tracks from Change Becomes Us. First up at number 8, I've got Doubles and Trebles. This is the opener, and Wire giving Ally in Exile the full band treatment for the first time proper. Yeah, lyrically, a very nervous, sinister tale of an undercover operative of some description, compromised, holding up. It's got a very similar feel, I think, to Reuters from Pink Flag, the band's debut. And next up, at number 9 on my list, I've got Reinvent Your Second Wheel, which is a beautiful, kind of almost weightless adaptation of ZEGKHOQP from Document and Eyewitness. And on this take, it's given a super melodic, dreamy, almost shoegaze rewrite, completely at odds with the original's clattering, kind of formless squall. A fantastic treated Graham Lewis vocal is the icing on this cake. Is this kind of skyscraping take on Eno-esque psychedelic pop. Yeah, it's fantastic. In fact, I think I should clarify here. I'm saying they retooled them, they recast them, and I'm saying rewrite, rework. Those kind of words, I don't think they really cut it here. Imagine a painter setting up in front of a beautiful vista, a huge landscape, and instead of painting that, deciding that he really likes the look of that, that rusty old gate over there, and he's going to paint that instead. That's the kind of approach you get here. Often the band would just pick up on the tiniest of details, the barest of starting points from the original song, and create something wholly new. And a perfect example would be my next selection at number 10. I've got Time Lock Fog, which for me is this stunningly moody mid-album, highlight. It's based very loosely on 5 out of 10, but it takes the smallest little tink, tink, tink percussive motif, a snatch of the bass line, and just a single line. You hear the phrase staunch believers. That makes it into Time Lock Fog. But Time Lock Fog itself is this droning kind of ambient nightmare, ticking and descending, spiraling into darkness. Yeah, this is an entirely stunning new creation from the tiniest of the original cues from 5 out of 10. And finally, at number 11, my last choice from this album, and it's As We Go. And I think this is the one that kind of points to the band's future direction with Matt on board. Yeah, the band here are this very smooth, gliding unit, leveraging the increasingly concerned lyrics of Graham Lewis, still lyrical and surreal, into these meticulously layered, post-punk pop constructs. Yeah, and as with Red Bark Trees from earlier, there is a message in here about how exploitation and destruction of the environment. So I think from this point on, from 2013 up to the present day, the band have enjoyed a late career renaissance that I think is completely unparalleled. I think the stability that Matt Sims gave them and the kind of the sure-footedness of Colin Newman's production style means we can kind of breeze through these albums, quite quickly without having to deal with any of the kind of personnel issues that we've had to so far in this story. So from 2015's self-titled album Wire, I've chosen 2 tracks. And at number 12, I've got In Manchester. Yeah, the very driving band-focused side of this version of Wire is on full display in Manchester. Yeah, these all sound like songs that are built to be played, as opposed to the kind of the constructions of the Send era. And the interesting thing about this one, I think, is that there's clearly still that weird compositional thing going on where Colin Newman kind of finds things within Graham Lewis's text and amplifies them. Yeah, the song kind of showcases this gloriously resolving chord sequence in the chorus, while Colin Newman is singing in Manchester over and over again. Yeah, it highlights this kind of quite unashamed, I think, twisted pop style that they were adapting at this point. And next up at 13, I've got Harpooned. And yeah, this is not twisted pop. Yeah, this is rock. This is just below the surface of all that prettiness. Yeah, Harpoon just shovels on slate grey sax of distorted droning guitar for, well over 8 minutes. Yeah, it's impressive. It's oppressive. It's depressive. It's this big slab of noise rock. I'm worried. I'm frightened as hell. Walls closing in. I'm feeling unwell, sings Colin Newman. And you also hear Colin pushing his voice hard here, more so than usual. Yeah, it's their most kind of turbulent, emotionally involving album closer, I think, since Too Late at the end of Chairs Missing. Yeah, the sessions for this album were especially fruitful, yielding plenty of material. Enough, in fact, for a short turnaround kind of mini album release in the form of Nocturnal Koreans. And the title track, Nocturnal Koreans, is the 14th on my list here. Yeah, a thrumming, bustling slice of late period wire pop. Do you think you're able of finding your way? Is as decipherable a lyric in this song as you're going to get, which takes in sea-burnt nurses, drug-impaired drivers, and Beavis and Butthead. Yeah, this is a good one. And racing ahead again to 2017 with their Silver Lead album. This will mark the 40th anniversary of Wire as a kind of proper performing group. And I think there were a couple of surprises here. Yeah, 15, I've chosen Sleep on the Wing. This one gives Rob Gray an uncharacteristically kind of skittering, light-limbed beat. It resembles something that you might hear on a Stereolab record, I think. And this kind of cooing, E-bowed guitar sound draws, a very lithe vocal melody out of Colin Newman. It's almost romantic sounding Wire here, which I think would have been almost unthinkable 40 years previously. Yeah, at 16, I've chosen the closing track, Silver Lead. And this one's on typically dark Graham Lewis territory. Gathering Clouds, Anoint the Dead, Massive Rooster, Silver Lead. Yeah, there's a very hazy, dry, kind of dusty, almost a kind of a Western feel about this one, which is really accentuated by this smoky, tremoloed guitar riff and this kind of almost plodding kind of horseback tempo. The Silver Lead reference is Graham's take on the two solutions to any problem as viewed by Mexican cartel members, silver being the money and lead being the bullet. Yeah, this one's a beautiful, all too brief song for me. The casts a very deep shadow with elegance and style. It's a big personal favourite of mine. And moving on now to 2020 with the band's Mind Hive album. And at 17, I've got Off the Beach, which on the surface is a very carefree, jangly piece of guitar pop. It's effortlessly breezy and melodic, with only a few, stabbing little chords in the bridge to hint at anything jarring musically at all. Yeah, but the lyrics here are amongst the darkest you'll ever hear from Wire. They seem to get more and more strained, verse by verse, until the song's abrupt close. Yeah, Colin sings people praying, disappearing, CC cameras, knives and hammers, people sleeping, broken, beaten, people lying, homeless, dying. Yeah, here you get sunshine and despair and horror pushed all together into something which on the surface is beautiful and hopeful sounding, whilst simultaneously documenting all the everyday ugliness and violence and societal collapse that's around us. I think this song is a piece of art up there with amongst the best things Wire have ever made. At 18, I've got Hung. This one is lyrically very minimal, but musically powerful, very thick, menacing. These wailing, distorted guitars, one of those kind of ticking time bomb, Rob Gray rhythms, a very deliberate kind of stalking sound. In a moment of doubt, the damage was done, sings Colin. It's very troubled, very doomy, very drony, but it still has, a typically kind of sing-song, folky, almost nursery rhyme vocal melody from Colin. And the song builds this huge, mounting, troubling atmosphere for the first 6 minutes of its, nearly 8-minute runtime. And you're expecting a big kind of blowout conclusion, but it just recedes gently into these kind of layered synth lines. Yeah, this one is a fabulously constructed piece of minimalist drama, I think. And the way it resolves into this kind of unexpectedly peaceful coda is quite something. And that piece leads you into track 19 on my list, the final one on Mind Hive. That's Humming. Yeah, a soothing kind of organ line with the gentlest of bass lines to mark out the rhythm here. There's not a drum on it. Graham Lewis's lyric here is pushed to the fore with that signature kind of Colin Newman multi-tracked, almost choral vocal style. It's absolutely spellbinding. Yeah, it's an almost resigned or doomed even snapshot of, the gradual fall of our society in the face of, extremist and populist ideology. Yeah, Colin sings, I can't quite remember when it went wrong. Someone was humming a popular song. Yeah, Graham Lewis pitches in at the end with a spoken verse to conclude humming. His cracked baritone is intoning what sounds like an epitaph to freedom and humanity. This is very strong stuff delivered with utter conviction and warmth and invention. I think it's as good as Wire have ever been. And finally, the last song on this list. And this one comes from 1020, which was their second release of the year 2020, consisting of 4 tracks recorded in sessions from about 2010 all the way through to the Mind Hive sessions. Yeah, this is a really interesting release and shows the band again, revisiting, recasting older material alongside a few previously unrecorded tracks that, had made it into live sets over the last 10 or 20 years. And it's great to see so many faces of the band's back catalogue being worked over here, from Underwater Experiences, from Document and Eyewitness, right through to Small Black Reptile from Manscape. But the track I've chosen as the last on my list, and one that I think resonates quite nicely with this list, is The Art of Persistence. Yeah, this is the title I've adopted for this second part of my Wire Primer series. An apt phrase, I think, to sum up the band's, long, sometimes fractious career. And a track that was initially recorded for the third day. This was a 5-track release documenting the band's third day of rehearsal, preparing for that Royal Festival Hall show back in the year 2000. Yeah, The Art of Persistence was the only new song on that release. So it's great to hear it get the full band treatment it deserves, rather than the kind of scratchy demo-style recording it got on that release. And it's classic Wire. Simple, textured, metronomic, melancholic pop. They sing Persistence, Survival, Test of the Wills. I think this is the perfect song to end this list. And that's my Wire 20 from the 21st century. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this kind of Wire mini season I've been running on the channel. Yeah, if you want to talk about any of my selections in this list or anything to do with any of these videos, yeah, just comment down below and I'll be sure to respond. As usual, check the description as well for links to any resources I may have kind of called upon here. Plus, you will also get a link to that Spotify playlist that I tend to generate for all of these lists. Keep your eyes peeled for one last video in Wire season. I'll pop a link up above if I've finished it by now. If not, check back here or check the channel page. Yeah, that's going to be a bit of a nerdy one, so be warned. And that's it. Yeah, if you like something in this video, then please do show your appreciation. It does help the channel. And why not subscribe while you're at it if you want to see more from me. Anyway, that's it. Yeah, take care and bye for now.